Greetings, MacNNers. It's a new week and thus another episode. Episode 50, Hawaii 5-0 of the MacNN podcast. Welcome back, MacNNers. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. I'm Charles Martin. I'm the editor of MacNN. And last week we had three of us on the podcast, and I about lost my mind. So this week we're just back down to me and good old managing editor Mike.
It's a good thing it was a slow week, huh? Nothing really happened. We didn't really do anything.
True.
We just kind of coasted this week.
Yeah, really. Just rested on our laurels. Mm-hmm. Oh, there is that one thing we did, which was...
What would that be?
Everything. So, yeah, we changed it all. It's kind of ironic, Mike. We are the site that is known for the series called The Feature Thief, in which we talk about when Apple comes in, burns the house down, and promises to build you a new house. And we sort of did that.
We burned the house down.
Burning down the house. Yeah. But before we get into that too much, I just want to say one thing. And this is a point that you have been making for many episodes now, but it actually applies to us, the site, as well, MacNN. And that is mobile. Mobile is not just the driving force behind the decisions that Apple makes these days. It is the driving force behind the decisions that news sites, not just Mac news sites or Apple news sites, no, all news sites are making. Mobile is the way that more and more people read this site and all the other ones, which is why you've seen over the last couple of years, yes, we're very late to this party, redesigns that emphasize mobile friendliness. And that's big graphics, large type, because we want it to look terrific on iPhones and iPads. I have to tell you that the first day was a little rough, but we did a lot of work on Friday on it and improved a lot of things. I've been checking the site on my mobile devices, and you know what? I'm going to say it right here. Looking good.
Yeah, things are going to continue to change just a little bit. There's going to be some more modifications done for Monday, and I would suspect there'll be some fixes just about every day next week as well. Here's the thing. This is how it is, okay? If you consider how we had it before, there's not a lot that's really changed other than some modernization, and we don't look like 2006 anymore.
Yeah, part of our charm, admittedly. But
And here's the thing. It's Friday, and I can hear you on Monday shaking your heads going, are you insane? I can see through space and time. But if you really look at it, we have the main news stories in the center of the page like we always did.
Yeah.
Instead of an area for 6 photo featured stories, we've got the one big one. And that's going to change more often after we get through this initial adjustment period.
Right.
Now, on the right-hand side of the page, we had other things before. We had most of our top stories, top forums, that kind of thing on the right-hand side. And now we've got these things called snippets. And what those are is little one-paragraph stories that when you click on the link, you're going to the source link or you're going to the App Store download page or whatever for that one paragraph story.
Right.
Okay, that's new. That's quick. You read the paragraph, you're done, you click, you're at the source. That's it. Simple as that.
Yeah, if you are interested in the source.
Yeah, if you're interested in clicking on the source. But we put stuff that's one paragraph there for a reason.
Right.
That's the whole story.
Yeah. The reviews are on the left-hand side. They weren't there before, but they were on the front page before. So it's just a matter of...
They're right center. Yeah. They were a little bit below the fold before. Now they're a little bit more prominent. We're going to be cranking out more of those, so just be a little patient. Yes, the single-word review is eventually going to disappear. It's left over from previous design. It's going to go. Just take it easy on that. Yeah. We are still accepting comments, politely phrased, politely discussed comments in the forums about things, okay? We are listening to everything. We read everything and respond to what needs to be responded to.
Yeah.
Something you don't like, let us know. Okay, like for instance, Internet Explorer 11. Not everyone had problems with Internet Explorer 11. Our test team didn't have problems with Internet Explorer 11. Some configurations with IE 11, the site is utterly broken. And we wouldn't have known that had you not told us.
Yeah.
Some ad blockers decide that text, our article text, but interestingly not the article pictures, might be ads, so it blocks them out. And that's relatively simple to fix. We've already passed that to the web team. That's going to be fixed. And again, we don't have the capability to test every web blocker ever. We tested it with some web blockers. We didn't have the problem. We moved on. So you told us that it was a problem. We're going to fix it.
Yep.
Okay, you told us you wanted dates on the pages on every single news item. You know what? That's a good idea. And we admitted that in the initial design after the first 24 hours. We're putting it back on.
Yep.
But we're not going back. We do have, for a while, you have the headline-only view in the old interface, and I don't have the link handy. It's in the article that I'm going to continue to update about what's going on with the redesign of the site. It's in there. You want it, read what's going on. It's at the bottom of the news item.
We actually did something like that after the last redesign. And of course, this is part of the problem, right? We haven't redesigned the site in many years.
8 years. It's been 8 years.
8 years. So of course you're very used to the old design. But the problem was that every time we would poll anyone under a certain age, they would always say, hey, it looks like a neat site. Why the 1996 look? Or something equally unflattering.
Yeah, look, we love you guys, but we want more of you guys.
Yes.
We want more readers to stick around. We want MacNN was the place to be in 2004. Mm-hmm. Let's get the traffic back to that.
Yeah.
Our website, we're still not a hipstery website with parallax and all this other stuff going on, right? We are still information dense.
Oh, no.
If you look at our homepage, people are saying, oh, there's so many ads, but there's not.
Yeah, it's the same number or fewer than we had.
We have the same or less advertising density than we had on Tuesday. Yeah. So just bear with us and just stick it out. Get used to the new website like you did 8 years ago, and it's going to be fine.
Nobody can even remember what the site looked like before the 8 years ago. But I do understand, and I appreciate the fact that because we waited so long to do a redesign, that it's a big change, and we get that. And there are some things, like you said, can get called out and we can fix. But on the whole, I have to tell you, because of course I have to look at this more than anyone else except Mike. We look at these stories on the phone. We look at these stories on the iPad. We look at the page hundreds of times a day. And the top might be a little cluttery at the moment. We'll work on that. But scroll down a little bit and you will see that in truth, the layout hasn't changed as much as you might think at first. And this is exactly what happened when The Daily Show changed their set quite a few years ago now. Jon Stewart came out and the audience booed that first day. And he just said, wait. And then they carried on the show. They did the show. And by the end of the week, people were like, what's wrong with this? This is fine. I do believe there's a little bit of culture shock happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say we're not disrupting your routine. We are. I mean, the webpage looks different. The color scheme is different. Things are different.
Yeah. We've moved stuff around. We've rearranged the furniture and in some cases maybe painted it an ugly color. So
we want to embrace our old school readers and listeners, and we want new ones. We want some of the people who looked at the website a week ago and said, oh my God, no.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie. There was a significant portion of our drive-by readership would not come back because the website looked like, and frankly was, from the mid part of the aughts.
Yeah. But also on top of that, I don't mean to keep stressing this, but if you don't have a site designed, you can certainly make a case that we could get Jonathan Ive in here to do something with this place. But if you don't have a website that is mobile friendly, you're dead. And that is what was slowly happening to us because
we weren't mobile friendly at all.
No, not at all. Actually, mobile hostile would be a fair way to put it.
Yeah, we'll call it that.
So we had to get more mobile friendly. That is just a fact of life. And I want to encourage everyone who's listening to this podcast, because you guys are the cool guys, check it out on your iPad or iPhone. I think you will find that it's really an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, just stick it out with us. The content mix. Look, here's the deal. I like the content mix.
Yeah.
I've been very happy with our content mix for a little bit over a year now. Gee, I wonder when I started being managing editor. Let me do some math. I like the content mix. That's not going to change. Your content mix and our style is not going to change. None of that changes.
Right.
Yep, there's been a little bit of a facelift, and you may not like it right now. Just bear with it. It loads faster. The page loads 3 times faster.
So fast. I know. I was just commenting on this in the chat room earlier today. So fast now. So that we like. But there are some, yeah, sure. If something's really interfering with your ability to enjoy the site, let us know. But, don't be a jerk about it. Just let us know. And we will, believe me, we take that on board very seriously.
Yep. We sure do.
The other thing I wanted to say about our site redesign is that, as Mike has touched on, and I just want to reiterate, the features that you have come to enjoy, our regular columns, and our emphasis on Apple News is not shifting. Like I said before, the furniture may be moved around a little, and it may take you a while to find everything, but we are underneath the new coat of paint, the same site. And we not only do we intend to continue doing what we're doing that you like, but we're going to try and keep expanding. We're going to try and keep doing new things that you like. The snippets is a good example of this. Lots of little things come through our feeds and we're like, oh, we should do, you know what, there's really not much to say there. And so sometimes that means it gets dropped off or it becomes part of a briefly. And it's harder to find that individual item that might be of interest to you. So we're trying out the snippets and we want to see how that goes. We want to see if it's something you respond to. It's raw news, you might say.
Yeah, that's it. It's all right there. The entire story, that one paragraph, no BS. It's all right there. Everything, the whole summary is right there.
Yeah. So anyway, give it a shot. And there's a couple of things that I want to mention that you should definitely check out.
Our search function works now.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's true. The search function works great now. Give it a shot. When you click on podcasts up on the top menu there, instantly you can find quick links to all the most recent episodes of our 2 podcasts. I was going to say 3.
Going to be 3 again.
It's going to be 3 again.
3 again. It's just not right now.
But you can find quick links to the most recent episodes of the podcast. Our forums have actually not shifted over yet. So the forums, you can go to the forums and they still look the same.
Well, the forums are a separate matter. The forums are probably going to retain their existing visual identity.
Oh, nice.
I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, they're kind of a separate beast anyway. So
there are some strange things going on with how the snippets interact with the forums, and we're going to get that worked out.
You know what's been kind of a kick for me this week is when I write news stories, and I'm sure this is true of the whole staff, I very often have to look back at what we've written about it before, particularly with court cases and stuff. And so it's been kind of to me, it's been very nifty to open up these old articles that I wrote a year or so ago and look at them in this new format. I like it.
Yeah, our old search, it barely worked. It sort of worked. It didn't necessarily pull up the most relevant. The new one is very, very nice. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to lie to you. We had our own search tool that we'd use that wasn't even our own search engine to pull up old articles. We can use our search now. It's just as good as our custom tool.
Yeah, it's great. One last thing is that we've made sharing stories easier.
Yeah.
We have little tiny share buttons on almost every story on the front page, but also when you're in a story and you get there by clicking on the headline of a given story, you will see, and it will actually scroll right along with you, the Facebook, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, and the G+ icon buttons. Just press one of them and you can share the story right away. And we would really appreciate it if you would.
Yeah, as always, we're not necessarily the first, but we are the least Kool-Aid-y.
Well, also, we have heard from some people that bits of the site look a little cluttery or busy, and we appreciate that. We understand. We will continue to look at how we can make that better. But have you looked at, well, I'm not going to name any sites, but you know.
No, don't.
You know what I'm saying.
We have our own visual identity.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying you will comply or anything like that here, but just take a little bit of time, get used to navigation, and you're going to find that its usability is just as good, if not better, than the old site. And frankly, we were getting complaints about the old site's usability from some of the regulars anyway.
Yeah.
So just bear with us. Just be patient. Adapt to the new site.
But we absolutely have gotten some good ideas from our readers.
Yeah.
We absolutely have gotten some, hey, did you know this doesn't work?
Yep.
Thank you. No, we didn't. And we absolutely have gotten stuff like, where did the links go on the first day?
Yeah.
Fair deal. We know.
Yep.
So yeah, we fixed that already. And lots of other things. So there's a lot of behind the stuff.
No plan survives contact with the enemy.
A very sage thing to say. All right. So check it out and please let us know what you think, especially if you like it.
Yeah. And if you don't, that's fine too. Just let us know.
Just let us know.
But be polite. You know, you keep threatening my family and I'm not going to be happy.
Besides, they didn't design it.
Yeah, my family's got nothing to do with it. So you can say,
they are blameless. Yeah. So moving on. We talked about content. I'm giving you content right now. We're going to talk about Apple Pay for a minute. There's been some exciting developments, and I really do feel like 2016 is going to be the year that Apple Pay starts to catch on. It won't be the year it takes over, but it will be the year that it starts to catch on. A couple of factors involved in that. One of the stories that we ran earlier last week was 2 million points of sale now for Apple Pay. Now, admittedly, that's worldwide. So this includes the countries in which Apple Pay is already available. But the U.S. is an increasingly large part of that. Like a lot of people have or are about to have, my bank contacted me and told me that I needed to switch cards from the one I've been using, my U.S. bank, to one with a chip in it. Yep. These are called EMV cards, which literally stands for Electronic MasterCard Visa. They're the ones who developed the standard.
So wittingly abbreviated.
Yes. They're also called chip cards, more commonly. They do work in a slightly different way. I don't want to go through the whole procedure, but you insert the card like you would at an ATM, chip first into the new sales terminals, and they read the chip, which verifies the information that's on the rest of the card, making it much harder to counterfeit. The magnetic stripe is still there for businesses that are not ready for this, but in a nutshell, that new card that you're going to get is more secure, but more importantly, that new card also has a standard that supports a sort of tiny little transmitter in it, and that allows for NFC and near-field communication. This is the key thing that makes Apple Pay, Android Pay, even PayPal's wallet sort of app work. It's also, you may already have a contactless card. That's what's powering all that.
Yeah, new United States legislation is requiring implementation of the chip and PIN cards in, it's like 90% of the United States' businesses by the end of this year. So while Apple Pay could have existed in 2010, there wasn't the impetus for the rest of the market to replace their machines with machines that were compatible with Apple Pay.
Right. But here's the brilliant part, right, is as you're replacing your old swipe and magnetic stripe terminal with these new insertable or swipeable or NFC point-of-sale terminals, you just gain Apple Pay compatibility. You just do.
Yeah.
You don't have to fill out forms and put a sticker on the door or anything. It just does work. Every time I go down to the States, whenever I see one of those machines, that's what I do, is I just point my watch at it and boom, it works. So I think there's going to be a lot more. There's 2 million now. I think easily before the end of the year, it's going to be 3 million. But also there are now officially, as of Friday, there are 1,000 U.S. banks and credit unions that support or issue Apple Pay compatible cards.
Yeah, if I've got my dates right, I think Apple promised 1,000 by next month.
Yeah, so they beat their deadline.
So they beat it.
And that doesn't even count the 2 loyalty cards, BJ's Wholesale Warehouse and Kohl's, that also, so it's actually 1,002. And again, that's not counting any of the foreign banks like all the London banks or the Amex card deal that works in Canada and Australia. So it's actually total number of banks is much higher. But 1,000 is very significant. And really, I don't know, they're down to the like Bob's savings and loan at this point. I'm going to have to explain to people what a savings and loan was. Ugh, feeling old. But there's a lot of smaller community banks out there, and it's nice to see. I have done business with a number of them, having lived in America for most of my life. I've done business with a lot of banks down there over the years, and every single one of the ones I have ever done business with now support an Apple Pay card. So that's great. One of the banks I used was an early adopter of it, so I've been able to use Apple Pay in the United States for quite some time. And yes, Panera Bread, I do eat there more often because of this, just so you know.
Here's the thing. Tim Cook said that of the people who have an iPhone, 30% of them have gone to a 6 series phone.
Mm-hmm. Now I think it's up to 40% now, but yes.
Well, whatever. I don't have the number handy. I'm pretty sure it was 30%, but let's assume 45% with the addition of the 5S.
Okay.
That means only 45% of the installed base of iPhones can use Apple Pay.
At all. Yes.
At all. So that's still a big user base that as time wears on and as contracts expire, that are going to upgrade to phones that have the capability to use Apple Pay.
Yeah.
So that's another factor that may or may not influence the adoption of the technology.
Well, as I say, merchants don't have to make a decision about this. Should I support Apple Pay or not? If you're changing out your terminal, get the one with the NFC support. Yeah. And not only will you be supporting Apple Pay, but I mean, this is a great move for everybody else as well. Android Pay works on the same principle, and so does Google Wallet.
Yeah, we've said before that the driving force behind this is not going to be the places taking it. It's going to be the number of people who decide to use it. Yeah. And that's exactly what's going on, because by accident, businesses will have new terminals.
Yeah, but I love how all these elements are coming together.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, as more people give it a try, I think they're going to be very, very addicted to it. I've noticed, because I've been spending a lot more time in coffee houses than I usually do. And I've noticed how many people use the Starbucks card system on their phones to pay for things. So we are training the public to sort of get used to this idea. Mm-hmm. Contactless MasterCard and Visa cards have been out in America for a while, but really you could only use them at like gas stations or a couple of other places. So I think as that expands, people get used to the idea of going, boop, all I can do is tell you what it's like from the perspective of somebody who gets to do it all the time. It is so fast And it is so easy. And then when you get an Apple Watch, you just kicked it up a notch on the fast and easy part. My joke is that the Apple Watch is a $350 device that allows you to keep your $800 device in your pocket. It really is great. I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket that much. For people who keep their phones in purses or backpacks or other places, this is going to be huge, that you don't have to keep doing that all the time, especially with a watch. But even if you do have to take the phone out to pay for something, you just put your thumb on the home button, wave the phone, say expecto payum, and boom, like a magic wand, there it is.
Is that helpful? You say the Harry Potter magic phrase.
I'm waiting for an electronic chip wallet that can store all of your cards and looks like a wand, because that's coming.
Oh, nerd.
Oh, it won't be me. That'll be my wife. I'm content to use the Sci-Fi Dick Tracy watch. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anyway, so Apple Pay, if you haven't checked it out and you do have a compatible model, check it out. It's worth doing. Yeah. Because I got the new card, I had to re-add it to my watch and my phone. This took one phone call to the bank to verify and a couple of minutes each to enter the card into the wallet application. It's interesting, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but the watch stores your credit card or debit card separately of your phone, even though you use the phone to enter the card onto the watch. I know that's confusing, but it's true. And the reason for this is that this means that you can use Apple Pay on your watch even if you didn't bring the phone at all. I don't think a lot of people know this, but it's true.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it works without it. How does it verify then? I'm glad you asked. The way it verifies is, of course, the passcode that you have to enter on the watch when you first turn it on. But for those of you who have an Apple Watch, that passcode is dependent on continuous skin contact. So it won't ask you for the passcode again. That would slow the whole thing down. What it does, though, is the moment the watch doesn't make contact with your skin, i.e. you take it off, you have to enter the passcode again before it can be used. So that's your check and balance. It's just great. I'm not really making myself clear, but it is so great. And I particularly enjoy it, I admit, when some cashier has never seen it before. Oh, that's fun. Hey, pardon me, I'm Mr. Sci-Fi. Boop! What do you think of that?
I'm Mr. Sci-Fi. Nice.
Living in the future. Where's my jetpack? All right, so moving on from a great thing to a not so great thing. Error 53. This is one of the things that I think separates us from some other sites. Let's just say that. And I'm not talking about like our friendly competitors. No. I'm talking about mainstream sites that really ought to know better, but do not. And that is that what Error 53 is a serious error that occurs on an iPhone. You will see stories this week about, watch out for Error 53, it'll brick your phone. But, of course, you may not read the whole story to find out the fuller explanation, and it just seems very alarmist to us. What's really going on here is this. It used to be, before the iPhone 5S, it used to be that your home button would occasionally get enough crud or skin oil or wet or whatever that it wouldn't work well. It just aged in some cases. I have an old iPhone 4 with this problem. You have to click it harder. It's just not working properly. And so you could just take it into any old iPhone type repair place, those places that repair cracked screens and all that. And they're like, doot, doot, doot. Yeah, here you go. They can fix that home button for you. As of Touch ID, this is not an area that can be repaired. You can still fix the cracked screen without having to go to an Apple store or an Apple authorized service provider, but not the home button anymore. The good news is, as far as I can tell, the home button not working anymore is pretty rare. You either had to have seriously abused it or pressed it after you just stuck your thumb in hydrochloric acid or some stupid thing like that. What's that burning sensation? Anyway, it's hard to break, at least as far as I can tell, having owned two phones now that have Touch ID. It's really hard to break. But if it is broken, you have to take it to an Apple store or an Apple authorized service provider. Or if you're not in an area where a lot of these stores are, you're going to have to mail the phone in. Why? Is it mean old Apple taking my fun away, not letting me pick anybody I want to fix this thing? No. The reason is because of that Touch ID sensor. It's tied to some of the most sensitive information on your phone, your fingerprint information and your financial information. Yes, they are encrypted, but unauthorized repair people, while they're fixing, air quotes, fixing your home button, they could be putting in a hardware hack that will read that data. Maybe I don't want that. maybe that would be bad. And so Apple has made it impossible, or at least as impossible as one can, for that kind of hardware trickery to happen. Admittedly, your risk of this actually happening to you is low, but if it was successful, it would be disastrous, not just for you personally, but for the security and trust that we put into Touch ID in the first place. So naturally, Apple has gone the extra mile to protect the hardware from hacking.
Yeah, I'm a tinkerer. I like tinkering with Apple gear. Okay, I always have. The fixability of Apple products has not been great in recent years, but the entire industry's fixability hasn't been great in the last couple of years. This is just Apple. This is the industry trend.
Yeah.
I am fine with this. I am fine with the tight hardware integration between the phone itself and the Touch ID sensor. I have no problems with that. This is not about Apple saying, no, you can't fix your phone. This is not an anti-third-party fixing thing that Apple just decided to stick up somebody. This is, well, this has potential security implications. Let's not allow this anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that at all. And people are saying, well, in Brazil, if this happens, then I don't have Apple stores everywhere. And it's hard for me to find an Apple authorized dealer. Yeah, it is. And I get that. Yeah. But this is still your personal information, and this is still information that you want retained. This is still something you want safe.
Yeah.
That's kind of the whole point of the iOS and Apple hardware, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why we use it. Yeah. So why would we want to short circuit that possibly?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
And again, I think that the image, if you will, or the trust that people have that this system, that Touch ID works, is important. And if it was ever compromised in a serious way that couldn't be shown to be just some kind of weird anomaly, then nobody would use it, and it would set the entire industry back hugely. And I'm not even getting to the banking aspect of it yet. So it's a big deal, actually. And in this particular case, yes, if you're in Lithuania and the home button breaks, you are going to be inconvenienced big time. Either it'll be difficult for you to find an Apple authorized dealer that can fix it, or you'll be without the phone for a couple of weeks while it gets mailed off and mailed back. Apple's actually pretty quick on these mail-in repairs, but you're in Lithuania, let's face it. So yeah, that's going to be an issue, but your odds of having a home button problem are low. And then your odds of having a home button problem when you happen to be far, far away. Of course, if you live in an area that doesn't have a great many Apple stores yet, that becomes more of an issue. But again, Apple has a mail-in service, and their recommendation is if you have this problem, or if you have already had a third party repair the home button and now your phone is bricked, contact Apple, and they will do their best to sort it out for you, I swear.
What I will fault Apple on is this is how it should have been all along. And Apple should have said, look, this is a fingerprint ID. It is as accurate as we can make it. It is secure and as strong as we can make it. If you break it, bring it to us. Do not bring it to ifixphones.com.
Well, you may be pissing off a potential advertiser there.
Possibly, but this is Apple promulgation. That's what they should have done from the get-go.
Yes.
They should have said, look, I don't care if you replace your screens. I don't care if you get a new back. I don't care if you do any of these things, but do not mess with the security underpinnings of the system.
Yeah.
If you do, you will lose your data. And they didn't do that, and that's what they should have done.
This protection has apparently been in place for a while now. Nobody's quite sure when it was first introduced, but I saw one report from somebody running iOS 8 that had this issue. So it's been around for a while, but you're right, Apple didn't say anything about it.
I think it's possible they just jacked up the sensitivity on the new OS releases.
I think they did, absolutely, yeah. And this ties into a story that we wrote before. One of the things that we wrote about last week was that Apple has hired two of the security research...
Thunderstrike.
Yeah. The security researchers, we shall call them, who developed the Thunderstrike 2 exploit for USB. So Apple is now becoming much more aware. Sure, there's software loopholes, and we fix those as we find them, but hardware flaws are really hard to fix. So it's much better to build a machine, well, too secure, if you could imagine such a thing, than to have it not be enough secure and have to recall them all, because that's your other option if an exploit gets developed. This whole USB thing has, it's largely been stymied, but it was, when we first reported on it, the Thunderstrike, you can go search it on our site, it was a serious problem because it was impossible to remove, incredibly difficult to detect, and just the act of plugging a USB cord into your Mac or PC could pass it on if that cord had been hardware altered. Now you see what we're talking about having Joe Fixit replace your Touch ID sensor, right? They may not always be trustworthy fixers. That's the point. Speaking of repairs, another story we did recently is about cracked screens. Now, I got to tell you, every city that I travel to has at least one or two businesses that is their primary source of income, is cracked screens. Even though this glass is terribly, terribly hard, it's not impervious to this problem, of course. And depending on what it is you did that caused it to crack in the first place, or what happened to it, sometimes it's not your fault, it can also take down the digitizer, the screen, the touchy part of the touch as well. So Apple's had enough of this problem. People dropping their phones all the time. I know that most of my close friends here in Victoria have had to have their iPhones repaired at least once. Luckily, it's not an expensive repair generally. But
yeah, it depends on the model. Depends. Like the iPhone 4, you had to go through the phone to replace the screen. The iPhone 5 is the other way around. To get to the back case, you have to go through the phone.
Yeah.
But to replace the screen, it's a much easier process.
And we've now got reports that in some places, Apple is expanding their AppleCare Plus warranty to help cover this, or to have a more affordable rate for replacing the cracked screen. In Japan, they are even offering screen protectors to people who have a history of cracking their screens.
Yeah, and installation. That's the key. They've always had screen protectors.
Yeah.
But now they have fancy Belkin installation machines to apply the films and whatnot onto the screens without any difficulty.
Oh, nice.
You know what? I'm not a huge fan of a film on the screen. I haven't run into any problems with it. I just don't care for it personally. My sister-in-law's broken the screen, but that's it. In our entire family, that is the only iPhone screen that we've broken.
Yeah, I know I'm going to sound like somebody's dad, but I handle my phone as though it cost $800 because it does.
Partly as an experiment, the 5C that I reviewed 2.5 years ago has been outside of a case for its entire life, and it's fine.
Yeah.
On the other hand, my sister-in-law dropped her 4 just one day in the rain, fell face down, bam, screen's broken. But I've dropped this thing 100 times, just ricocheting it around.
Yeah. My iPhone 4s and my 5S that I had, I always put a case on that had a little lip over the front, and that did save my bacon one day. It wasn't a long fall just from my desk to the floor, but it was a hard floor. But it landed face down, like toast does when you buttered it and drop it.
Yep.
And as a result of that lip, there was no damage. So I've always kind of liked those cases.
Yeah, it's just... It happens. It happens. It's just, but I don't think those little plastic films are going to stop any of it.
Well, this is the other thing is if you want to laugh like you have not laughed in years, like watching a classic silent comedy laugh must have been for people in the 1920s, you could watch me try to put a screen protector on because it will end up half of it up my nose. I mean, I am so butterfingers with that stuff. One of the reasons that I wrote a very glowing review once of the Moshi iPad screen protector is because you can't muss it up. It's not so thin and plasticky that the slightest little wrinkle or bubble will drive you insane because you literally can't do it incorrectly.
Okay.
So they put a big border around it and they just made it's Mylar instead of thin cling film, essentially. And it just works great. I know, free plug for Moshi. Sorry, but it's true. The bottom line here is please do your best to try and not break your screen. I know, right? What?
But on the other hand, Apple will actually consider broken devices now for trade-in, apparently. So I guess it's an interesting trend. I see so many broken phones.
Yeah. I am going to call that progress, though, that Apple is accepting them for trade-in. I think that's a big plus.
Sure. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. No. But like you, I treat my phone like it's an $800 device.
All right. So moving on. Irony! Yes, in possibly one of the most ironic business moves ever, Amazon, which has done more than anything else to put more bookstores out of business than anyone ever, is opening bookstores.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, this is based on a remark from a guy who leases space in malls. There's no reason for him to lie about this.
Oh, yeah, there is. His own stock price.
All right. There's one reason for him to lie about it. But Amazon probably would have come out with a denial by now, and they certainly haven't. So I don't know why Amazon didn't do this after they killed off Borders. because they really did help kill off Borders. Not the only thing that killed off Borders, but remember Borders? Anybody?
No, I loved Borders. Borders was good.
I loved that place. Loved it. The whole chain just went away one day into liquidation. Not even like, oh, we'll reorganize, we'll change the name, we'll get bought up by Barnes & Noble. Nope, gone, out. And in Maitland, Florida, where I used to live, there's still empty Borders stores.
Yeah, I suspect that most of the Borders are still empty, which, could be easy pickings for Amazon to roll into. To be fair to Amazon, they have one bookstore.
Yes.
It's in Seattle.
Of course.
Okay, all the books face out. The prices are the same as they are on Amazon.com.
Right.
Now, one of our commenters did say that he would love the Amazon bookstores to be a place that he can bring Amazon returns to and not have to pay to ship it back.
Yes,
to
I love that.
You know what? I'm all for that.
I love that.
That makes utter perfect sense. So I'm glad that he thought of that.
Yes.
We'll see. They were rumored a couple years ago to be opening a New York City store. Never materialized.
Yeah. There was some talk that they were going to turn the old Radio Shack stores into pick up and drop off places.
Yep. There was talk about that. We'll see how it goes. The Amazon hardware is not so advanced they need to showroom it.
Yeah.
At this point, people are comfortable enough with tablets that they can say, oh, well, this is just a tablet from Amazon.
Right.
And they don't need to have it out so you can play with it and touch it and all these other things. I'm 50-50 on this one. The source, I don't care for the source. The source is a CEO of a company that's been financially troubled and has declared bankruptcy twice in 20 years.
So it's a Trump company. Whoa!
Oh, hey! All week, try the veal. The malls are deteriorating because of places like Amazon.
Yeah.
So as a result, his finances are deteriorating as a result of Amazon.
Well, even Circuit City, which actually is apparently on the way back. What?
Yeah, no.
But Circuit City, blamed part of the reason that it closed down and went away on showrooming, which is a phenomenon where you actually go to the store to hold something, to see something, and then you go home and order it on Amazon.
Well, that's what Best Buy complains about as well.
Yeah. It's a big problem. But it's going to be interesting to see how Amazon copes with the idea of paying rent and employees. Because right now, their only capital outlay really is storage space, physical storage space for all the items, and the warehouse workers that box it up.
Yeah.
So this is not like owning a store, at all. It's going to be a dramatic cost. And this is a company that still has not figured out how to make money yet.
This is a company that prioritizes growth and expansion over profit. And at some point, they have to shift that. This is not the way to do it.
Well, as you mentioned, there's a couple of good uses for these bookstores. Some of them could be large enough in certain cities where you can get away with this. Some of them could be large enough that they can also be pickup points for Amazon orders. That'd be for common items. That would be great. And as you mentioned, return points. There is a precedent for this, though. Up here in Canada, we have a chain of bookstores called Chapters. And Chapters is first and foremost a bookstore. If you've ever been in a Barnes & Noble, you've been in something incredibly similar to a Chapters. Books are the emphasis. They do sell coffee mugs and CDs and other things, but it really is a book store. However, Indigo, the company that owns Chapters, is a business partner with the company that makes the Kobo
kidding.
e-reader.
Okay.
And as a result, a huge amount of floor space in that bookstore is devoted to, by the way, you see all these paper books around? Here's a Kobo. Maybe you should get that.
Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for Kobos because they use EPUBs. They use EPUB file formats, the same as the iPad's native file format for iBooks.
Yes, right. And Kobos are quite popular here, or they were because they were originally a Canadian company. Not anymore.
Yeah, that's working out real well for BlackBerry.
I know. Ow. We'll get to them in a minute. So I would imagine that an Amazon store, I would want it to be a bookstore. That would be great. And some of their most popular items that are not books. That would be great. But there's going to be a big section devoted to the Fire, the Kindle, and the other products that they actually make. Yeah. That's okay, but they really should come up to Chapters and take a look at how that works before proceeding with that plan.
No, I have no doubt that they already have. It's people assume, and they do this with Apple too, that they don't do their market research before they do anything. But I guarantee that Amazon and Apple both do market research to within an inch of its natural life before they do anything.
Although it doesn't seem to have worked out terribly well for Amazon. I mean, the Kindle does okay, but it hasn't taken over the world. Well, none of the Fire stuff has set anything on fire.
It hasn't, but the Kindle is intended as a tablet the same way I use these smaller format iPads.
Yeah.
They're media extenders, and that's what they've been designed from the get-go. They've got the new Dolby Stereo. They've got all these things in the tablets that enhance the media consumption abilities of the device over the usability. An Amazon tablet has all of the advantages and disadvantages of a walled garden like Apple, and all of the advantages and disadvantages of an open format format like Android simultaneously in one box, because it's an Android box. The Fire OS is Android. It's a modified Android, but the simplest way to get apps is through Amazon.
Well, and not only that, but I think they're pushy in how much they tie every product they make into ordering from Amazon.
Who does that sound like to you?
Well, this is the thing. If I, an Apple iOS ecosystem customer, feel like Amazon is being pushy, that's probably too pushy. Because that's just their most famous example is the literal Wi-Fi enabled button that you stick on, say, your washing machine that has a sticker on it that says Tide or whatever brand you use. When you run low, you press the button and it automatically instigates an Amazon order for more Tide.
Oh, man, I tell you what, because of life things, we have Amazon Prime here.
Right.
Dangerous.
Yeah, well, I love Amazon Prime.
We are so close to distribution center. I have had things, it'll be there in 2 business days. 4 hours later, it's here.
They could just walk it over on their lunch break.
And, that's literally what they do. They put it in a van with a big old frickin' A on the side of it, and the same guy comes up every day and says, here's your thing, man. I'm like, okay.
I actually was in part of the Pacific Northwest. I forget exactly where, but probably outside Portland. And I saw an Amazon locker for the first time.
Yeah, I don't think those are doing that great.
I don't think they're doing that great, but the idea that it speeds up the delivery time to not deliver it strictly to your home, but to drop it off at an Amazon locker, and so you get it a day or two earlier than you would have otherwise. That's remarkable. So there's certainly, and of course they're the ones who've been talking about drone deliveries, which has been fodder for every late night comedian. But the idea is we really want to get you this stuff, and I think the bookstore concept is part of the strategy there, but I have a feeling that Amazon needs to figure out how to make money first before they start operating storefronts, because any small business owner is going to tell you there's a lot more to it than just a space and a door and an open and closed sign.
I think that the industry will see more in the way of retail hires before this becomes a real serious thing. We have mall analysts saying that Apple stores bring in foot traffic to malls, which increases spending in malls.
But generally, yes.
However, the same CEO of the mall real estate company said, no, Apple stores suck the life out of malls because no one else grows. I have a hard time reconciling that statement, because you can say that nobody else grows, but that's not, I think that's BS. I don't think you go into a mall with laser-like focus on the Apple store. I think you spend some time in the Haagen-Dazs, and you spend some time seeing Santa and all these other things that you spend money in the mall incidentally. So I'm not sure I buy what this guy is saying. Just the nature of his remarks in his conference call for his company were just so slick and so sleazy. I just don't buy it.
Yeah. Well, I have been both of those guys, right? I have ordered things from the Apple Store that were expensive enough that I wanted to drop by the Apple Store, pick it up, and proceed directly to the car. So I have done the laser-like focus. But if I'm in a mall that has an Apple Store just for some other reason, I will make it a point to wander around and go visit the Apple Store if I can find it. I've got pictures from all across America of Apple stores that I've visited.
I mean, I have lugged a G5 through a mall to get the damn thing thermally calibrated. I have done that.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but it hurt, So yeah, I guess I've done the same thing. But I'm just so skeptical of this claim by this mall property manager.
Well, as I say, you can be both of those people at the same time. Well, not simultaneously, but you can be that kind of customer who goes to the mall and what else have they got here and wanders around a bit. Yeah. But you can also be, I just bought a MacBook Pro and I got to get it home quickly. Zing, pick it up, zing.
Or you can do that through Amazon Prime. Play the music. We got one more thing to talk about.
One more thing. And by one more thing, I'm not referring to Malcolm and William's excellent podcast.
Yeah, we'll get to William in a minute.
Yeah, we will. I mean,
Seagate hard drives.
Yeah, I mean, one more thing as in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Because what's a week in the Apple world without a lawsuit, really?
Without a lawsuit, without somebody getting sued. Yeah. And we're not even talking about the patent lawsuit from Vernet X. That's a whole separate issue. It's going to take years to resolve. Anyway.
I have that firmly scheduled for episode 145.
I think will probably be about right on that one. Mm-hmm. We're going to be hearing more about Vernet X this week, I think, and we'll probably talk about it next week on the podcast.
Yeah.
But if you have a Seagate 3 terabyte hard drive, you want to hit our website and you want to go to the Hagens Berman law firm and fill out their form about the drive and when you got it and has it failed, and if it failed, did you get a replacement, or was it refurbished, or was it new, that kind of thing.
Yeah, get in on this suit. We don't normally suggest you do this, but get in on this suit if this has happened to you.
Here's why I'm wondering how this is going to go. The drive has about a 15% failure rate annually, and, I can hear the pitchforks and the torches being fired up now, but that's less than consumer televisions now. So
That's a good point.
we've got this hard drive that's failing less than a Walmart television. So what is the judge going to say about this? Whose responsibility is it to have reliable data? Is it Seagate? Is it the consumer?
Yeah.
Where's the issue here?
Whether or not it's successful, I do not know. But the argument that will be made is that, yes, you have a point that 15% failure rate is actually fairly low compared to some other things. But in its own industry, it's exceptionally high. And some models, particularly the 3 terabyte ones, can sometimes have a much higher failure rate than that.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin. I mean, the drive does have a statistically higher failure rate than other companies' drives.
Well, the weird part is it has a ridiculously high failure rate compared to Seagate's 4 terabyte drives. What?
Yeah.
And they're 5 terabyte drives for that matter. What? What's magic about the 3 terabyte? What's the problem?
Right now, the Seagate 3 terabyte drive is in the hot seat. It has not always been that way.
Yeah.
We actually had a really healthy discussion in the forums about this, and some things were said that, we don't put in the article. Things like a hard drive, every hard drive is on its way to failure.
Right.
And it's not a question of if it will fail, it's a question of when it will fail. And that's a true statement.
Yeah.
All of these hard drives ever made, they will fail someday.
Yeah.
They are mechanically spinning devices.
Yeah, we are, for the purposes of this discussion, we are only talking about spinning traditional hard disk drives.
Yeah. Very, very small tolerances.
Yeah.
Very, very fast spinning drive.
Yep.
They will fail at some point, and there's no maintenance being done on the motor on these at all. So it's in a sealed container. Mm-hmm. No maintenance in a hot environment is a recipe for failure.
Yes, I mean, it's odd that all the other brands, particularly HGST, but almost all the other brands, have much lower failure rates based on the testing we've seen by, in particular, Backblaze, but also there's other documentation that supports this. So, yeah, there's kind of a mystery there about why that is, but what I want to know is this, and this is what the whole case may hinge on. Backblaze first published these results based on their testing, which is atypical, but nevertheless, their testing of consumer-level hard drives from various brands more than 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, I think. And Seagate apparently did not respond to that problem at all. It was a very big graph with a very large line and right on those drives.
You see, I disagree. I think they did respond to it, but they didn't announce they responded to it. It is this particular drive that is failing a great deal. And people can come in with apocryphal data and say, well, I had a 1.5 terabyte and it failed, but that's not a statistically significant sample. One user saying that it failed is not a reliable sample.
Well, as you say, all hard drives will fail. So even if your hard drive has a 4% average failure rate, you might be one of the 4%.
Yeah. When we talked about the HGST reliability, we had people in the forums saying, oh, no, you got to be kidding me, right? And anyone remember the DeskStar drives from 2002?
Yeah, that was Hitachi, the same company who is now HGST.
Or how about zip drives? Well, I have some failure rates for those. Zip 100s, 22% annual failure rate. Zip 250s, 18% annual failure rate.
Yeah.
And these aren't the disks, these are the drives.
Yep.
The IBM DeskStar drives, HGST from 2002, 17.6% annual failure rate. We've seen these numbers before, and it's Seagate right now.
Yeah, those figures are from 2 decades ago, I might add, when the zip drives were king.
And reliable and everywhere.
Yeah, I swore off zip and jazz drives after 2 of them. It was the click of death, which was, for those of you who remember, it was the cartridge was destroyed.
Yeah.
Or the data on the cartridge was destroyed, and then the drive killed itself as a result. And amusing now to look back. But the thing was, even if you could get the cartridge back out again, the data was corrupted. It was
no data. Yeah. I would be surprised if the judge who gets this case is going to throw the book at Seagate on this one. You know what? It is a statistically significant higher failure rate than the rest in its class.
Right.
I get that. But compared to other consumer goods, it's not ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that. And I hate to take this position, but that's just the reality of it.
Yeah. It only looks bad when you compare it to other hard drive makers who make 3 terabyte drives, oddly enough. If this pressure results in Seagate making the decision to fix this on a large-scale recall or something like that, as they probably should have done 2.5 years ago, then the case will have done its job, I think. But in the meantime, yeah, I do wonder if this isn't just trial lawyers trying to get some money. But there is something there. There is a fire, not just smoke.
Yes, I am not denying that there's a statistically higher significance of failure of this drive in comparison to its class.
Yeah.
However, when compared to other drives from other problems and
right.
other consumer goods, it's not outlandish. And that's why I don't think the judge is going to do anything.
In a court of law, this might not pass muster. But in the
court of opinion, that's an entirely
court
different
of opinion,
matter.
This is really hurting Seagate badly, and they really should do something about it. In the meantime, I would avoid getting a 3 terabyte drive from them. But to be perfectly honest, I can't say the same about their other products. I have one Seagate drive. This is anecdotal, of course, but I have one Seagate drive. It has performed fine. It's not a 3 terabyte. So for me, it's been working out just fine. And one last thing I want to say about this is there has been a lot of consolidation and change of ownership and stuff like that in the hard drive industry. Those of us who have been around long enough remember when Western Digital was the redheaded stepchild.
Well, technically there again, if you looked at the most recent data from Backblaze.
I know. It's almost funny. The notorious Desk Star, or Death Star as we used to call it, drives from Hitachi. It's been everybody's turn in the industry. Go on any forum you like, particularly the MacNN forums, and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a blank drive. Anybody have any bad experiences?
Yeah, somebody will have had a bad experience.
You'll get responses. So the only thing I can say, and this ties into something that I was telling somebody the other day about SSD drives. They're great, and they are more shock-proof than spinning hard drives, but they do fail.
Yep, they do.
The preliminary data, because they've really only been popular for a few years, the preliminary data would seem to indicate that they fail less often.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
But when they fail, they don't warn you the way spinning hard drives sometimes do.
I know. Yeah, they don't. What I have seen is with hard drive failures, it gets slower, it gets louder, and you've got a little bit of time where you go, yeah, okay, it's time.
Yeah, if you pay the attention to the signs, you usually have an opportunity to rescue that data.
Yeah, but one day you'll come back to your SSD and go, why is my computer not booting? And you've got no audible hard drive noise to troubleshoot. And it worked perfectly fast yesterday. Yep.
So they do tend to die suddenly. And so the bottom line here is this. Storage media, spinning or SSD, should be treated as though they were light bulbs. Light bulbs work great and generally very reliably for a terribly long time.
Until they don't.
And they literally could fail at any moment.
Yep.
So
maybe you better have another light bulb in the house.
Yes. There you go. You're way ahead of me. The bottom line here is, regardless of what your storage medium is, whether it's SSD or HDD or a hybrid fusion drive, whatever, back it up. That's your only real protection. Back it.
And let's be perfectly clear, a backup means you have it in more than one place at a time. Taking it off your computer and putting it on another hard drive and putting that hard drive somewhere else, that's not a backup. That's still just one copy of your data.
Yes, it's better than nothing, I want to stress. A time machine backup, better than nothing. But ideally, particularly for that subset of your data that is really hard to replace, like your photos, for example, you want to have, I would say, 2 minimum backups of that, and in entirely different locations. One of them could be the cloud, but the idea here is that your most precious data should always be protected against not just the hard drive dying, but natural disaster or man-made disaster. Something really bad happening. We're all doomed when the Earth's magnetic poles realign or the sun blows out. But until then, there's things we can do, and you should do.
Giant rock from outer space.
And if you think to yourself, you know what, I only do my backups very periodically. There's not much there. To that, I say to you, you may have a point, but think of the archaeologists, man. Think of the archaeologists. Next up, App of the Week. Oh, yes. Special 50th episode anniversary edition. We have actually, I've been making the joke about how this episode 50 it's an artificial milestone because we took some weeks off around Christmas and New Year's, we just happened to have gotten to the 50th one. But in fact, last week was our 1-year anniversary of the podcast. So it is kind of a big deal.
You see, I was just digging through SoundCloud to take a look at it, but yeah, you got it.
And I just wanted to say that all the people who have ever appeared on the MacNN podcast have made it really special. from our first episode to now, we've slicked it up. We've tightened things up. I think we've made it funnier over time, even as we've reduced the number of people that appear on it. But everybody's been terrific on the show. We've been very, very blessed to have some wonderful staff members who have appeared. And this is all just one elaborate pitch to get Amber to come on.
Okay.
Episode 100, Amber. You're not getting out of it. Anyway, but in all seriousness, while I'm not going to suggest that you go back and listen to all 50 previous episodes, I will say that we're, at least speaking for myself, increasingly proud of the quality of this podcast, and we hope that you're enjoying it. We would also like some feedback on that. I promise you we're not redesigning the podcast, okay? So just relax. It's all right. We're not going to come at you in quadraphonic next week.
That would be cool.
where you have to have an iPad Pro to hear Mike.
That would be awesome.
Now I'm on the left side. Now I'm on the right side. But if you would, and I always say this at the end of the episodes, but I'm going to say it a little early, is, let your friends know. We think this is one of the more entertaining weekly roundups of tech news that you're going to find, to be quite frank. And so we hope you will help us spread the word.
From two old radio guys.
Oh, I almost forgot about William. I'm so sorry, William.
Yeah, geez, he's waiting in the green room still.
He's probably eating all the M&Ms we put out. All right. William, come on out and let us know, what is your app of the week?
Yeah, I don't actually have an app of the week this time, but I can do you an app of about 6 days. Would that be okay? It's the new AirMail 1.0 for iPhone, and it's an alternative to Apple Mail, except it isn't a complete alternative. So far, I've not found any email app that is, and that's why it's an app of about 6 days. I nipped back to Apple Mail. AirMail is very, very good at a lot of things, and you may well find that it is all you need ever on your iPhone. It's that good. But all of these are very, very good things. They kind of boil down to one philosophy, really. They make dealing with your incoming email faster. With a swipe, you can send a message off to your favorite to-do app. You can send it to your calendar, add the sender to your email VIP list, make a note about the message, set a reminder. What you'll do most is archive the ones you've read and want to keep, or delete the ones you don't. And those actions, archive and delete, are the quickest things in the entire Fast app. And you can also snooze a message, which means it vanishes from your inbox and returns again at some time you've picked, exactly as if the sender had only just sent it then. That didn't originally appeal to me. It didn't sound like a great thing, but it is peculiarly helpful. It gets the email off your plate and off your mind until the time you've said you're ready for it, which I think sounds great. All of AirMail sounds great, because it is, except you can't delete Apple Mail from your iPhone, and also AirMail won't let you into various other mailboxes you might have. I travel a lot, and I do rely on TripIt, but I also keep current email travel documents in a mailbox called Travel Bits, just in case. It's been necessary enough times that I do it automatically now. So you have to keep Apple Mail around, and you want to keep Apple Mail around, and that means you see this. Apple Mail is faster at getting emails. It's slower at most other things, but that one thing is key. You see the red badge and you hear the bleep from Apple Mail first, so you go into that first. This isn't a criticism of AirMail so much as a recognition of its limits, the limits of it and all non-Apple email apps. The Apple one is always going to get the mail first. It's plugged into the iOS. If you adored AirMail, you could get around that by switching off notifications on the Apple Mail one, and you could hide it away in a folder somewhere, but you'd still need it every now and again to get something from Travel Bits. Funny enough, though, it is travel where I think AirMail works best. I think it is greatest when you're on the move and you must deal with a lot of emails on the way. So I may have gone back to Apple Mail on the 7th day, but I'm keeping AirMail around for next week, at least. AirMail 1.0 is $5 in the App Store.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode 50 of the MacNN podcast. We're so pleased to be starting our second year with you, and we hope that you'll stick around, those of you who have been listening. And for any new listeners, welcome. I promise next week it'll be better. On behalf of the entire staff of the redesigned MacNN, I might add, my name is Charles Martin. I'm the editor of MacNN. Over there in Northern Virginia is managing editor Mike.
Yeah, it's going to snow again on Tuesday. Send supplies.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say send snacks, because you know how that didn't work out too well for the last people that said that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, we'll see you next week, because guess what? Apple's going to do more stuff, man. I swear it'll happen. Trust me. Anyway, thank you very much, and good night, everybody.
Good night.
Goodbye.